Present.
Mr. Berenson,
Present.
Mr. Barber,
Present.
Ms. Abdelgawad. You'll have to unmute.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend,
Present.
Mr. Holman,
Present.
Mr. Burke.
I am here.
That's fine.
That's about it.
We have a still picture of you, so we know what you look like. And Mr. Serco. Mr. Serco.
Yes, I'm back.
Okay. All right. We got you. All right. So everybody's here. We'll go ahead and start the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, April the 6th. I wish to tell you that the City Council work session tonight will be conducted virtually with council members conferencing into City Hall. In accordance with the state of emergency declared by the Missouri Governor, Executive Order number 5 and the Cass County Health Department Order number 20-06 requiring shelter at home, the public will not be present tonight. And those of us here at City Hall are practicing the proper social distancing guidelines. The public can view the meeting live by going to www.raymore.com/video. And with that, we'll go ahead and start the work session. Item A on the agenda tonight is the economic development update, and I will turn it over to Mr. Gress.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight in this unique circumstance. I think it was just under 4 months ago that I was here with the chamber at a work session and gave you all a presentation on kind of the outlook 2020 for economic development here for the city. So I'm happy to be back roughly the end of first quarter to give you all kind of a sneak peek at some of the stuff that's been going on within the department. I'll be following along, if you can see, the presentation that was shared with you all this afternoon. So if you have any questions or if you get lost, just ask me which page number we're on and we'll all get back on track. But first and foremost, just giving the circumstances of the meeting, I thought it'd be appropriate to discuss some of the efforts that we've been doing within the department as well as kind of citywide to communicate with some of our local businesses here amidst the coronavirus pandemic. So as you're aware, I'm sure, a lot of the methods that a lot of our businesses have for conducting business have changed dramatically over the last couple of months, and myself and some other staff here at City Hall have been doing anything that we can to work directly with. Can you hear me better? Excellent. So me and city staff have been working directly with some of our local businesses as well as representatives from the state across the state of Missouri to filter down information from the state level as well as pass information up from local businesses up to some of our state representatives so that they have a clear picture of the current state of things here within the city. So we've been working directly with the Chamber of Commerce here within the city to blast out information to all of the chamber members and some of our local businesses here within the city. I've been working directly on a weekly basis with our contacts with the Missouri Department of Economic Development to filter information here from the local level in Raymore up to their staff in the form of surveys, phone calls, questionnaires to ensure that the folks at the state level have a clear picture of the state of things across Missouri as well as here at the local level in Raymore. So those efforts have been, excuse me, going very well so far, and I hope to continue those as we continue to deal with everything going on currently. I'll give a quick shout out to our communications manager, Melissa Harmer. If you haven't had a chance to visit her resource page that she got up and running this morning, I think I would encourage you to visit that. It's raymore.com/COVID-19. I was working with her on getting all the information into kind of one singular centralized spot so that it's easy to find, easy to read for all of our local businesses to ensure that they have all the resources that they need to address some of the issues that they're seeing as part of this. So that project kind of started as a one-off idea to make some of our residents aware which businesses were still open, what their kind of new or tailored hours were, and some of the new services that they've had. But it kind of snowballed into this really comprehensive resource landing page. So I definitely encourage you all to take a look at that if you have a second. Moving on to page 3, one of the things that was one of the items that I wanted to hit really hard when I started in this position was taking a closer look at some of our marketing and outreach materials to ensure that they fit the message that we're trying to portray as a city, especially as we continue to change every day. So we've been working over the last month here recently with Lynchpin Ideas, who's done a lot of communication and marketing work for the city before. And I included in your email this morning kind of a snapshot of just a couple of the pages that will be in our final document that we're calling kind of the Raymore Solutions marketing materials. So I'm very excited to see the final product of that. We just had a meeting last week to go through some revisions, and I'm hoping to get the final product back here within the next week or two for a second set of revisions, and then move on to finalizing that. So I look forward to sharing that with you all and kind of deploying that once we get through the thick of kind of what's going on right now, so that we can rebound the best that we can and continue to attract new businesses here to the city of Raymore. One of the things that's a little bit different that I also shared a link to was not only are we kind of refreshing some of our print materials that can be passed out physically, but I'm trying to take the department in the direction of having more of a digital presence as well. And so I shared a link to one of the ArcGIS map tours that was created for a project I'll talk about here in just a second. But just know that as we get some of these finalized materials back, I do intend to upload and implement a lot of those different graphics and those materials digitally so that we can spread our materials out that way as well through email and media such as that. So very excited to be working on that over the next couple of weeks. Moving on to page 4, we kind of touched on the maintenance items that we're working on right now as a city, but we haven't forgotten some of the business attraction efforts that we've been working on for the last couple of years. So if you've driven past the North Cass interchange at all recently, you've seen that Van Trust is out there right now moving a lot of dirt, grading their site, clearing some trees so that they can prepare the site for the extension of Dean Avenue and some of the utilities that will eventually serve that site. Currently, hopefully at this point, I think Mr. Fearborn has brought you all up to speed on the project that we're pursuing right now down at the interchange, which is the prospective development of a roughly 1 million square foot distribution and fulfillment center. Very exciting project. Myself, the mayor, and Mr. Icky had the opportunity to take a trip to the East Coast earlier last month to take a tour of that prospective tenant's current facility, their headquarters, get a really good idea of what it is they're looking to do here in the Kansas City area. It was a very unique experience, and I think I can speak for the three of us when I say that we learned a lot about that organization and realized how good of a fit they could be for our community here. So I look forward to working with KCADC and some of their local partners to see that project through to the finish line. I can say right now, as it stands, that the Raymore site is still positioned as a very favorable site in the Kansas City area. So we look forward to seeing that go forward. Moving on to page 5, kind of continuing on that project. One of the things that we had originally had scheduled, just as we had the opportunity to visit their site on the East Coast, we had invited them here to Raymore to kind of take a tour of our community and show them what we're about as a community. Unfortunately, as the coronavirus continued to unfold, that site visit was postponed and then canceled altogether as they worked to deal with this crisis internally on their own front. However, we realized that there's a lot of things going on here in the community that you can't really see if you just happen to drive past the site. And so I worked with our police department, who was generous enough to deploy their mobile command center, their drone, to get that up in there and take some really nice aerial photographs, videos of not only the Good Ranch, but we took some really nice video and photos of the lofts at Fox Ridge that's currently under construction, Hawk Ridge Park, everything that's going on up there. A lot of things that I'll continue to use in some of the marketing for some of the different sites here around the city. So I definitely appreciate all the work that they did to get those pieces of equipment out, and I hope it will definitely pay off for those efforts. But the last link that I sent you was for the Come Home to Growth virtual map tour, which was the document that was created for the project that we were pursuing down at the interchange. Has a lot of good information about projects that you all are well aware of, but it just is a very unique interface to go through and look at some of the different things going on throughout the community. So definitely take a few minutes and look at that if you haven't already. I look forward to different iterations of that in the future as we continue to chase some more projects. Last but not least, over on page 6 of the packet, the last thing I wanted to bring you all up to speed on and sort of preface as we go through the process of this project. Staff has been working over the last couple of months with a local Kansas City area developer who has an interest in the Timber Trails commercial site, which is in the graphic on the right-hand side of your packet is the area highlighted in yellow. There's 2 individual portions of that. One has already been taken up with the Benton House, there north side of Johnston Drive. The piece that this developer is interested in is the 3.73 acre tract of land that's in the very northwest corner of that site. And they have an interest in developing it in tandem with a hotel and a restaurant. So they're currently evaluating the different options that they have within their hotel chain of the different brands, different styles of hotels that would work well for the Raymore market. As we continue to go through the process and talking about this project with the developer, the conversation sort of transpired into what would it look like if we were to develop this as a potential conference center or an event center to serve the Raymore, greater Cass County area. And so we've been going back and forth with that developer to try and figure out what that could look like. We had a good conversation with the Chamber of Commerce to figure out what they see as a need here in the city of Raymore and Cass County for this type of development. And sort of the next step that we're hopeful to take, hopefully once we get through the thick of coronavirus and figure out the best way to move forward, is try to help the current developer better understand the current market for not just the hotel, but more specifically the conference and event center that would be kind of the last piece of their project that they're interested in doing. And so I included in your packet kind of a rough framework of what a potential market analysis or hotel study could look like. We've been kind of going back and forth to figure out the different pieces that would fit into a study like this, what the process and timeline would be, and try and figure out how we could work that into our budget this year to move forward with this project. And so on the last page of the handout that I forwarded to you, you'll see there's 7 tasks. You'll see tasks 6, 7, and 8 got a little bit mixed up, but for clarification, there's 7 different steps that a project like this typically would involve, and would get a really good understanding of what demand generators, what events there could be the market for here in the Raymore area, and how those could all feed into a way to support a project like this. And so I look forward in the next couple of months to working here internally with staff and hopefully coming back to you all at a later date with a presentation, a proposal for the first step in this project to keep it moving forward. That would conclude my portion of the presentation. If you all have any questions about the projects I talked about here or projects you had hoped would have been in this update, I'm more than happy to answer those. But if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I had a question.
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you. Excellent report, Mr. DeGrasse. I just had one quick question with regard to the last part of your brief on the hotel conference center market study. Is that something common for hotels going in, or is that just specific to this project? Given how there's fairly new hotels already installed in our area, I was just curious if this particular project is requiring this level of project scope beyond what the developer would do.
Yeah, great question. So the necessity for a study like this really becomes important when you look at the event center or the conference center component of the project. With just strictly a hotel and a potential restaurant, I mean, it's still important to do this type of research and figure out what support there is for a project like that. But the need for this feasibility study really comes from the fact that the developer is also looking at doing some sort of conference or event center. So they need to have a good understanding, and we too as a community, of what different generators, organizations are out there that would fill the need for that type of facility. And so that's sort of the impetus for looking at this study as part of this project.
Okay, perfect. Excellent response. anticipating something similar to that. Just wanted to kind of clarify from my own understanding, given that there's already some new hotels installed and don't know what this particular developer was willing to install from a price point perspective, from the offerings that they're going to have available to the community, in addition to what looks to be possibility of a conference center, which is another opportunity for the area. So again, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Holman, did you have something?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. You just went on mute. No, you're back up.
On
Go ahead. You're up.
the market study and feasibility analysis, what the cost on something like that might be, and if there were opportunities for partnership between us and other groups such as the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, great question again. So in the studies that staff has done to kind of estimate what a cost would be, there's two potential pieces. The first step would be what you see there as tasks 1 through 5, which is the true market analysis or the feasibility study, and that would be generally about $23,000 to $24,000. The second half of that, which is typically an optional piece, would be quantifying what that study could look like within the community. So it would be a kind of an economic impact study for not only this project, but just what the overall demand for this type of development is in Cass County or Raymore, et cetera. And that type of study would be between $10,000 and $12,000, depending on the scope of it. And I'll reiterate that. The second piece, the impact study, is typically optional. Some cities do it, some cities don't. It really just depends on the direction that the city wants to take with a project like this.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay, do you have a second part to your presentation, Mr. Gress?
I don't think so.
I know the other packet that was attached to the email that you sent.
Yeah, that was just a snippet of kind of an example of the layout, the feel of what our marketing materials are going to look like here in the future.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
this is Councilman Townsend. I did want to comment on the marketing material, the story map that was forwarded to us. I like the layout. I like the digital aspect of it, to include the videos. And I had a question on the videos. Is it intended to just be a video, or is there going to be audio narration with those videos?
So the options with that program specifically are pretty endless. What I have on there right now is just strictly what the time I had to put together and the timeline of the project. But basically anything you can upload to YouTube or any other video hosting website, you can link directly to an app like that. And so, you know, we could get pretty creative with some of our projects and creating some of those different apps.
Gotcha. Again, excellent layout. I like the presentation of it. If you don't decide to put audio with the videos, I would just add, if you make a comment on the document saying no video, because I spent a little bit assuming that it was video, thinking it was on my end, thinking there's some audio on it. But just as an aside, if you don't decide to do that, just a little idea to put on that document.
Good to know.
It's an excellent document.
okay. Do we want to wait and see if Ms. Abdelgawad hooks back up? Because I think she dropped from the meeting here for some reason.
Mr. Ickey's trying to get in touch with her now, sir.
Okay. So let's wait, let's give it a few minutes and see if she comes back online here. If there are no additional questions of Mr. Gress, you guys want to swap out?
Sure.
Because I think Mr. Murdoch will be up next. Oh, okay. All right. Well, we were unable to make contact with Ms. Abdelgawad, so we'll go ahead and move on with the second item on our work session, which is the COVID-19 update. Mr. Murdoch is here with us tonight, our Emergency Management Director, and he will be providing that update. Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to give you guys another update, as the situation obviously has changed and continues to change on a near hourly basis. with how we are reacting within not only our local communities, but across the nation in response to the pandemic. As we go through this update, if you all have questions about specific responses or things that we're doing within the city, obviously Chief Zimmerman is also here and can answer things in relation to the police department. I can answer the questions in relation to the emergency management side, the response effort, the state effort, and of course Mr. Gress is here too and could also answer some things in relation to small business and things like that if you have some of those particular questions. As of 4 p.m. today, we do have 25 cases. So just a quick numbers thing for you all. As of 4 p.m. today, 25 confirmed cases of COVID-19 within Cass County. We had one within Raymore that dropped off today, but we added another one, so we still are at 5 cases within the city of Raymore right now. And so we have 25 cases that have been confirmed within the county. One of the things, if anybody goes on the Cass County Health Department's website to look at the total number of cases, please remember that as this situation progresses, we're getting the total number of cases, not the total active cases. So as addresses and cases of people have recovered, those are still getting counted as the total number of cases within Cass County, even though they might not currently be an active case. So that'll be something that we have talked to the health department about starting to provide the numbers of recovered patients within the county. And as we get more people who have recovered, the health department is going to do their best to provide those numbers to us so that we can give them to you as well. Within Missouri, we now have 2,722 cases. That is up almost 360 cases today. One of the things that I was telling other members of staff here today is to watch out if you are somebody who is looking at the Department of Health and Senior Services site to see the total number of people within Missouri, because over the weekend, those numbers are going to be artificially low because private labs are not reporting their results to the state. So for example, yesterday we only had like 78 people or 78 new cases in Missouri. Today we had 355, I believe was the exact number. One piece of positive news within the state of Missouri is we now have tested about 30,000 people, which gives us a positive test rate of about 8.7%. That's one of the lowest positive percent rates in the country. That is a piece of good news in Missouri as we continue to expand our testing capabilities within the state. We aren't seeing a huge spike in total positive cases, so that is something that is good as well. One of the updates that the Cass County Health Department is also giving is whether or not we currently have enough hospital space within the entire Kansas City region to handle those cases as they come in. One of the good things that is going on as well is all of our local healthcare providers have done a pretty remarkable job in terms of preparing for the number of patients that they could see. As a result, the bed space availability within hospitals is well above the need right now. And so that's a good thing. Doesn't mean that it will stay that way if we see a huge spike in Missouri, but currently the Kansas City area does have the capacity to handle the number of cases that we might see. I do want to give also a positive comment to Belton Regional, who has done a very, very nice job of preparing their facility for any cases that they might get. In terms of emergency management with this particular pandemic, we are kind of in the resource acquisition process. We are continually trying to find PPE materials, not only for law enforcement, but also to make sure that we can meet any needs of our city staff as well. I know Mr. Fearborn has also been helping us in that effort. Between South Metro Fire, the police department, and emergency management, I do think that we are continually working well together to make sure that we also are providing those particular resources for all staff when we can. We certainly are short PPE gear within law enforcement. There's no doubt about that, and we continue to try to find those resources for our officers. We are not unique in terms of law enforcement agencies across the state in terms of being short that protective equipment, as the state is continually trying to access it as well and send out supplies. They did send out their first shipment of protective equipment. It would be remiss to say, though, that it was a very, very small amount, would not even cover a third of our law enforcement officers right now. So that's one thing that we are going to continually do. The State Emergency Operations Center is activated right now on a 24/7 basis to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Raymore has technically opened their Emergency Operations Center as well. For us, that just means that we have the capability to receive 24/7 communications. That would be going to either me or to Chief Zimmerman. Our technical EOC is open from 9 a.m. To 4 p.m. each day. That's where, if people had calls within the state, that they could also reach us as well. We have the 2 executive orders that are going right now. As you all know, we have the Cass County stay-at-home order, which was issued March 23rd, and then we had the governor who issued his stay-at-home order on Friday. I think it's important to highlight 2 things in regards to these orders. Number one is the governor's order mirrors very closely what we were already doing in Cass County. And in fact, actually, Cass County's order is more strict than what the governor's order is, and that's fine. The governor's order does include, though, some stipulations in regards to square footage of retail businesses. That's something that staff here in the city is going to have to figure out, along with those businesses, to figure out what those numbers will actually look like, especially for our large stores within the city. The actual order states that any business under 10,000 square feet can only have 25% of the fire code capacity, and any business over 10,000 square feet can only have 10% of the fire code in their store at any one particular time. Employees are excluded from that. So those are kind of 2 things that are going on with the orders. Cass County's order is in effect until April 24th. That also closes the schools until April 24th. I don't think any of us would be shocked to see an extension of these particular orders as we get closer and closer to the end of the month. 2 kind of final notes, and then we can open this up if you guys have any questions here. The very first thing is we're going to see a peak probably in the numbers, not only within the nation, but here in Missouri, probably in the next 2.5 weeks. Some states, New York and New Jersey might see that peak a little bit sooner than Missouri, just from the sheer number of cases that they have had. But we're going to see that peak probably here in the next 2 to 2.5 weeks. It'll be very important that we continue to communicate to the public that even once our numbers start to go down within the Kansas City region, that we maintain the guidelines for at least a few weeks after. Otherwise, all we're going to end up seeing is a valley. We're going to go down into a valley and we're going to go right back up. And so that's one of the things that the state is communicating as well, is that we need to do a really good job of communicating with our public that just because we see numbers start to go down, that we're not going to end up getting to go right back to normal immediately after that happens. And then lastly here is a lot of people have been sending questions about when they think things will end up reopening, talking with state legislators and also with the State Emergency Operations Center. I think we certainly will see things going on all the way until at least May, meaning through May, with hopefully getting things back up and running into June and July, I think is really probably is where we're at, just kind of the logical step here. There's multiple pieces of federal legislation I know that are going, but that is stuff that city staff is working with as well to try to make sure that we can cover as many things as possible here as we go through this particular pandemic. If you all have any questions for me or for other people in regards to things that we're doing within the city, within the region, or within the state, we're happy to answer them right now.
Ryan, the one question I had was that I've had a couple of calls on has been garage sales. With the springtime setting in, people home cleaning, they're talking about wanting to open their garage sales. Has there been discussion during the county briefing at 4 p.m. each day? Any discussion about that and the rules governing that?
That actually was a question that was brought up, I believe it was on last Thursday's call. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. There is no definitive decision to ban garage sales right now. The only thing that the Cass County Health Department is saying as of this moment is that those people who would be attending any garage sale would have to maintain the social distancing requirements. It would not surprise me, though, sir, if they ended up saying to prohibit garage sales.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what I've been telling people, is to hold off until May if possible.
I think that's
and
a
watch
very
for new
safe bet.
guidance.
Right, and I do think that that would be coming here in the next week or so, because I know that that question has come up.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Questions? Anyone?
Yeah, Tom Circo here, Councilman Circo.
Mr. Circo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was watching a report tonight on Missouri on our a number of COVID-19. When their percent came out, that 63% of the state right now, their positives are in the St. Louis area, St. Louis County, and other large portions in the Kansas City or Jackson County. So it looks like most of Missouri, for us on our large numbers, are really staying highly consistent with the two major cities to the east and west here on the north end, and less around the communities that are really like ours, who are doing such a great job of separation and doing what we do. So that's what I heard tonight on the numbers.
And that is accurate. The St. Louis City, St. Louis County, St. Charles County, those three areas on that, and actually Jefferson County by St. Louis, those four areas do account for, I believe it's about 46% of the state cases. That was, I might have those numbers off by a day or two in terms of the reporting. And then, yeah, Jackson County and Kansas City proper do have the rest, a majority of the cases on our side. I will tell you, Columbia has quite a few cases. Springfield has quite a few cases in Greene County. And so we just need to continue to do a really, really good job. Our health department was quick to point out that even though we had 21 cases on Friday and now we have 25 cases today, that even a jump of 4 is a 20% increase for our county, and we don't want to continue to see that level of percentage increase over the course of the next few days, that we want to see it hopefully in the single digits to low teens would show us that we're doing a really, really good job with our protective measures.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Holman.
I was curious, Mr. Murdoch, when you talk about concerns for protective gear for our people, are you talking about face masks primarily?
I would be talking about primarily, yes, face masks, but I would also be talking about making sure that we have the proper amount of gloves, gowns, though we are relatively well stocked on that. Masks do tend to be the thing that we are short.
I didn't know if anyone had reached out. I saw a news story last night on Channel 9. There's a company in Cleveland, Missouri making carbon fiber masks that are designated N99. I'm sure they're swamped, but they are local. It might be somebody we might check with.
I would be happy to look into it. I had not heard that, just so I would be happy to look into it, though.
Yeah, I saw the
in
same
Cleveland?
story. Chief saw the
Find the
story.
news story and forward it to Mr. Dearborn.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Anybody else have a question of Mr. Murdoch? If there are none, Mr. Murdoch, thank you so much for that update. I know you guys are staying busy. We appreciate your long hours, you and the chief both hanging in there along with other staff members who go to a plethora of meetings on a daily basis and have our own meeting, in fact, in the mornings. But we'll now move on to Mr. Feuerborn. I know under other, you did want to talk about some budgetary considerations.
Yes, thank you, sir. As Mr. Murdoch had indicated, and as most of you who have been following this particular progression of events the last 2 to 3 weeks, there is precious little resource reaching the city from the state level, and the entirety of the stimulus package included absolutely $0 to supplement local efforts that we know are going to be cut back by things like reduction in sales tax, increased prices associated with insurances in the upcoming months, increased prices for certain goods that we're having to purchase because of shortages. To that end, and as an interim method to attempt to cut some costs for the city, we've implemented the following measures that I'd like to outline to you all. Prior to this, all purchases over $1,000 had to be a priori approved by the city manager. I have reduced that threshold. The assistant city manager will be reviewing ahead of time prior to purchase any purchases between $500 and $1,000. I will continue to review all those above $1,000. Mr. Icky has volunteered to do that to take some of the pressure off of me as far as the sheer number that will be coming in. That's item number one. Item number two, all promotions in all departments are on hold. With the exception of police and dispatch, there will be no filling of unfilled and posted positions at this time. Item number three, there will be no hiring of part-time or seasonal positions. Current part-time positions have been terminated. Item number four, suspension of all travel, suspension of all professional development that is not online. Item number five, suspension of non-infrastructure capital projects that have not been bid or started. This will include the City Hall Police Department parking lot repair, exterior door replacement at City Hall sidewalk replacement and repair. However, the lowering of the tower is still on an emergency basis. Radiant heaters for public works, sanitary sewer inflow and infiltration, Silvertop Lane Bridge wing wells. That item may come back because it may be a requirement of MDNR. G, culvert replacement at Aspen and Olive. H, Crest Drive inlet replacement. This will leave basically all major infrastructure projects will still be on. All street preservation, curb, sidewalk programs are still in place. The savings associated with these particular cuts in the near term, and it doesn't mean if we get to mid-June and things have turned around, some of these items could be brought back. But right now, especially for instance, the travel, it includes all travel to the end of the fiscal year. The part-time and seasonal positions, those are through the end of June. The promotions that are on hold and unfilled positions, I can give you those numbers by month. For item number two, the positions being on hold, the general fund, that's a savings of $11,440 per month. The park fund, that's a savings of $7,480 per month. The enterprise fund, that's a savings of $5,454 per month. No hiring of part-time or seasonal positions through the end of June. General fund savings of $4,800. Park fund savings of $40,262. Enterprise fund savings of $4,800. The suspension of all travel, savings in the general fund to the end of the year, savings in the general fund of $23,686. Savings in the park fund of $4,000. Savings in the enterprise fund of $4,500. The entirety of savings across the capital funds with putting those projects on a suspension basis is $194,000. I'd be happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Anyone have any questions? Mr. Fearborn.
I had a question, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Townsend.
So, Mr. Fearborn, I appreciate your update and yourself and your staff working through to come up with the best way forward for in the budget. In your best assessment, based on conversations we've had, are you able to articulate what the long-term impacts to our budget, seeing how we're approaching a month into the stay-at-home and how that's affecting the local economy? What does that mean to our budget, say month to month or fiscal?
Historically, what we know is that when we see this sort of recession in the economy, for each month that we're out, for each 3 weeks to 1 month that you are out, you can expect long-term effects, albeit subtle, to last a year. So do I realistically think that this is going to impact the fiscal year 2021 budget? Yes, I do.
Right. Thank you, sir.
And we'll have a better, you and I just had the discussion this afternoon about income, sales tax revenue. We'd have a better idea of how we've been affected by that on the 18th of April. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. We will be receiving both. We receive sales taxes either depending on the size of the business and the type of business. We receive our sales taxes either on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis. So April, we will be receiving anybody who pays by the quarter. It would be January through March, and we'll also be receiving the monthly impacts for those who pay monthly for the month of March. We'll have a pretty good idea. I anticipate that in this first month, we're going to be receiving a false positive in that hoarding will be offsetting people not being able to eat in restaurants and other closed businesses that generate a sales tax. But that initial 2-week hoarding period, those sales taxes will be considerably up. Now we see that beginning to level off as we go into the month of April here. We will see the hoarding level off, but we will still see the lack of sales tax from the other businesses. So what we see in May for April payments will probably be much more accurate to the extent of the drop in sales tax that's associated with this. We still do not know what the impact is going to be on the delay in payments because of the Department of Revenue not making collections. There will be a delay in items that we get from the state level, such as the state gasoline tax. All of those we anticipate a delay on as far as the state even having personnel in place to process those through to us.
Any questions of Mr. Fearborn? I will tell you that, do what?
I had a question.
Mr. Barber, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. Thank you for that comprehensive report. I read the letter that you forwarded us from the National League of Cities, and I know that is just happened, but has there been any feedback from that? Is there anything you can share with us from that?
It was courtesy copy to the President of the United States, and I expected to hear from him almost immediately, but apparently he's got other things on his mind. We really appreciate it. You may have noticed, if you've been following it, MML has really kind of, during this crisis, partnered with the National League of Cities even more so than ICMA, as far as the National League of Cities kind of coming out strong for the local level. We have not heard anything back on that. We do continue to hear that both the President and the Speaker of the House are pretty adamant that phase 4 of the stimulus package will be all about infrastructure, and they continue to from both of those levels, continue to toss around the number of $2 trillion. In conversations with Senator Hawley's office, relative to our local projects, they have actually opened back up the idea that a significant portion of that $2 trillion, if that is the amount that is approved, will be in the form of earmarks. So you'll remember the old earmark program. Those will probably be coming back.
The thing that I was going to say is that the Mayor's Caucus continues to work on local legislators to try and bring to the forefront the Wayfair bill that would provide for the local taxation, because we don't have a local use tax here in Raymore. Some cities have adopted that local use tax. We have not. But the Wayfair bill that was being considered would put that in place. There was a group of folks down at the House that were wanting an offset reduction in state income tax to offset that windfall were the Wayfair bill to pass to put sales tax on online purchases. We're trying to get them to reconsider that at this time. It's one of the few things that is still potentially there for legislation purposes, because the rest of the year has kind of been washed out given what's going on. They still have to pass their budget, and so their budget will be one thing that they do have to go back to Jefferson City for. And I'm not sure if they're doing that this week. And then from what I understand, it was going to be a tedious process because they were going to have to go in one at a time and vote on it into the House in order to keep the social distancing thing in effect. So
They were shooting for Thursday of this week, sir.
Thursday of this week. So we'll see how serious they've taken MMLs and the Mayor's Caucus group to for consideration with regard to the Wayfair bill. And Mr. Fearborn's waving at me. Do you have some input there?
Just one last significant item. The mayor and I received a letter last week from Evergy, and it's one area where I think we can count ourselves somewhat lucky. We will feel an impact on it, but they were reminding all the municipalities that they serve that if there is significant, especially significant manufacturing in their cities, where that manufacturing is shut down, that the franchise tax collections from those are going to, obviously, you can imagine the Clay Como plant is shut down. There is no energy being used there. Who's ever collecting the franchise tax for that is going to absolutely plummet for some of those cities. We will see it in a much smaller measure where dining rooms are closed, so no energy is being used. But I think we can count ourselves lucky in the short term that we don't have a large manufacturing facility like that. We'll keep our fingers crossed for the future, but right now, those cities are going to feel the impact.
Yep. Any other questions of Mr. Fearborn? If not, that concludes our agenda tonight. Thank you all for your patience and diligence, and this worked out pretty good, I think, and we appreciate your presence tonight for the meeting. So thank you and have a good evening.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Holman.
this is Councilmember Holman. I did have one question before we adjourn.
Okay.
Do any of you cut hair? Because in about 2 more meetings, I'm going to look like the Geico caveman.
Well, I'm a barber.
Good point, sir.
Oh, excellent. I like that.
You can follow.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good evening.